Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp. Imagine hospitals so dirty and dangerous that more soldiers died from disease than from battle wounds. Imagine a time when people believed that fresh air and cleanliness were harmful to sick patients. Now imagine a determined young woman who changed all of this forever. This is the remarkable story of Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing and one of the most important healthcare reformers in history. Florence was called the Lady with the Lamp because she walked through dark hospital wards at night, carrying a lamp to check on wounded soldiers. But her real light was the knowledge and compassion she brought to healthcare. She proved that proper nursing care could save thousands of lives. Florence transformed nursing from an unrespected job into a noble profession. She showed the world that hospitals could be places of healing instead of death. Her work changed medicine forever and saved countless lives around the world. Before we explore Florence's inspiring journey, please remember to subscribe to our channel, Beginner Bio Stories. We create simple English stories about famous people to help you learn English, while discovering the lives of extraordinary individuals who made our world better. Now, let's discover the amazing story of Florence Nightingale, the woman who brought light to the darkest places and revolutionized healthcare for all humanity. Early life in a wealthy family. Florence Nightingale was born on May 12, 1820, in Florence, Italy. Her parents, William Edward Nightingale and Frances Smith, were wealthy English people who were traveling through Europe at the time. They named their daughter after the beautiful Italian city where she was born. Florence had an older sister named Parthenope, who was also named after a city in Italy. The Nightingale family was very rich and belonged to the upper class of English society. They owned 2 large houses in England. In summer, they lived at Lea Hurst in Derbyshire, and in winter, they stayed at Embley Park in Hampshire. Both houses were surrounded by beautiful gardens and had many servants to take care of the family's needs. Florence's father, William, was an educated man who believed in the importance of learning. Unlike most wealthy families of that time, he decided to educate his daughters himself instead of hiring a governess. William taught Florence and her sister many subjects including mathematics, languages, philosophy, and history. Florence was an excellent student who loved learning and reading books. Florence was particularly good at mathematics and statistics. She could solve difficult problems and understood numbers better than most adults. Her father was proud of her intelligence and encouraged her to continue studying. This mathematical ability would later become very important in her work as a healthcare reformer. The Nightingale family expected Florence to live the life of a typical wealthy young woman. This meant she should attend social parties, wear beautiful clothes, find a suitable husband from a good family, get married, and have children. Florence was supposed to enjoy a comfortable life without working or having a career. However, Florence was different from other girls of her social class. She was not interested in parties, fashion, or finding a husband. She preferred reading books, studying and thinking about serious topics. Florence felt that her life should have a greater purpose than just being beautiful and entertaining guests at social events. When Florence was young, she often helped take care of sick animals and people in her neighborhood. She had a natural ability to comfort those who were suffering and make them feel better. Florence felt happy when she could help others, and she began to think that caring for sick people might be her calling in life. Florence's parents were not pleased with her interests. In Victorian England, nursing was considered a job for poor, uneducated women. Many nurses were known to drink alcohol and behave badly. The idea that a wealthy, educated young lady would want to become a nurse was shocking to Florence's family and friends. The call to serve God. When Florence was 16 years old, she experienced what she called a divine calling. While walking in the gardens at Embley Park, Florence felt that God was speaking to her directly. She believed that God was calling her to serve Him by helping other people, though she was not yet sure exactly how she would do this. This religious experience was very important to Florence. She became deeply religious and spent many hours praying and reading the Bible. Florence believed that God had given her special gifts and that she had a responsibility to use these gifts to help others. This belief gave her the strength to go against her family's wishes and pursue her own path in life. Florence began to think more seriously about becoming a nurse. She started reading everything she could find about hospitals and health care. She discovered that hospitals in England were terrible places where poor people went to die. The conditions were dirty, the nurses were untrained, and many patients died from infections and neglect rather than from their original illnesses. Florence was horrified by what she learned about hospitals and nursing. She realized that proper health care could save many lives, but the current system was failing patients. She began to believe that God wanted her to reform health care and improve conditions for sick people. In 1844, when Florence was 24 years old, she told her parents that she wanted to train as a nurse. Her family was absolutely shocked and refused to allow it. They believed that nursing was beneath their social status and would bring shame to the family name. Florence's mother, Frances, was particularly upset and tried everything she could to change her daughter's mind. The conflict with her family caused Florence great emotional pain. She loved her parents and sister, but she could not ignore what she believed was God's calling for her life. Florence fell into a period of depression and felt torn between her duty to her family and her desire to serve others through nursing. For several years, Florence struggled with this conflict. She continued to live at home and participate in family activities, but she was unhappy and restless. She wrote in her diary about feeling trapped and unable to fulfill her true purpose in life. Florence described these years as a time of great spiritual struggle and personal anguish. During this difficult period, Florence continued to educate herself about healthcare and hospitals. She secretly collected information about nursing training programs in other countries. She corresponded with people who were working to improve healthcare conditions. Florence was preparing herself for the day when she could finally begin her real work, breaking free and learning to nurse. In 1849, Florence made a decision that shocked her family even more than her original desire to become a nurse. She announced that she was going to travel to Egypt and Europe to study hospitals and healthcare systems in other countries. Despite her family's objections, Florence was determined to learn everything she could about nursing and hospital management. During her travels, Florence visited hospitals in Egypt, Greece, and Germany. She was horrified by the conditions she found in most places, but she also discovered some hospitals that were clean, well-organized, and effective at treating patients. These good hospitals showed Florence that proper health care was possible with the right knowledge and organization. In Germany, Florence found the Kaiserswerth Institute, a hospital and nursing school run by Protestant deaconesses. The nurses at Kaiserswerth were well-trained, dedicated women who provided excellent care to their patients. Florence was impressed by their knowledge, skill, and compassionate attitude toward the sick. Florence spent several weeks at Kaiserswerth, learning basic nursing skills and observing how a well-run hospital should operate. She learned how to care for wounds, give medications, comfort dying patients, and maintain clean, healthy conditions in hospital wards. This training gave Florence the practical knowledge she needed to become an effective nurse. When Florence returned to England, she was more determined than ever to pursue her calling in healthcare. In 1853, she accepted a position as superintendent of a small hospital for sick gentlewomen in London. This was Florence's first real job, and she approached it with great enthusiasm and energy. At the hospital in London, Florence immediately began making improvements. She reorganized the nursing staff, improved sanitation, and established better procedures for patient care. She also installed a system of bells so that patients could call for help when they needed it. These changes greatly improved the quality of care and the hospital's reputation. Florence's work at the London hospital proved that she had excellent organizational skills and natural leadership abilities. She could manage people effectively, solve problems quickly, and make difficult decisions under pressure. These skills would soon be needed for a much greater challenge. Florence also used her position to gather statistics about patient care and hospital management. She kept detailed records of how many patients recovered, how many died, and what treatments were most effective. This scientific approach to healthcare was unusual at the time, but it would become one of Florence's most important contributions to medicine. The Crimean War, a call to action. In 1853, Britain became involved in the Crimean War, fighting alongside France and Turkey against Russia. The war was fought in the Crimea, a peninsula in the Black Sea region that is now part of Ukraine. British soldiers were sent to fight in this distant land, far from home and proper medical support. Soon, terrible news began reaching England about the conditions faced by British soldiers in the Crimea. Wounded soldiers were dying not from their battle injuries, but from diseases and infections caused by horrible conditions in military hospitals. Reports described hospitals that were more like death traps than places of healing. The British public was outraged by these reports. Families demanded that the government do something to help their sons, husbands, and fathers who were suffering and dying in foreign hospitals. Newspapers published angry articles about the government's failure to provide proper medical care for soldiers. Sidney Herbert, the Secretary of War, was a friend of Florence's family and knew about her work in hospital reform. In October 1854, he wrote to Florence asking if she would go to the Crimea to organize nursing care for wounded British soldiers. This was an unprecedented request, as no woman had ever been given such responsibility in a military setting. Florence immediately accepted the challenge. She knew this was the opportunity she had been preparing for her entire life. God had called her to serve others, and now she could serve her country while advancing the cause of proper health care and nursing. Florence quickly assembled a team of 38 nurses to accompany her to the Crimea. Finding qualified nurses was difficult because nursing was still not a respected profession in England. Many of the women who volunteered were not well trained or suited for the harsh conditions they would face in a war zone. The journey to the Crimea was long and dangerous. Florence and her nurses had to travel by ship across the Mediterranean Sea and then overland to reach the military hospitals. They faced storms at sea, uncomfortable accommodations, and the constant worry about what they would find when they reached their destination. When Florence and her nurses arrived at the main British military hospital in Scutari, now part of Istanbul, Turkey, they were shocked by what they found. The hospital was built on top of sewers and was filled with rats, fleas, and other vermin. There was no clean water, no proper sanitation, and no adequate supplies for treating wounded soldiers, transforming hell into a place of healing. The hospital at Scutari was the worst place Florence had ever seen. Wounded soldiers lay on dirty floors because there were not enough beds. The smell was terrible because there were no proper toilets or drainage systems. Soldiers were dying from diseases like cholera, typhus, and dysentery, more often than from their battle wounds. The military doctors at Scutari did not want Florence and her nurses there. They believed that women had no place in military hospitals, and that the nurses would only get in the way. The doctors refused to let Florence's team help with patient care, and tried to limit their access to the hospital wards. Florence was frustrated by this resistance, but she did not give up. She used her own money to buy supplies that the hospital desperately needed, including clean sheets, towels, soap, and food for the patients. She also hired local workers to clean the hospital and repair damaged areas. Gradually, Florence proved that she and her nurses could make a real difference. She organized the nursing staff into efficient teams, established regular schedules for patient care, and created systems for keeping accurate records of each patient's condition and treatment. Florence worked 18 hours a day, supervising every aspect of hospital operations. Florence paid special attention to sanitation and cleanliness. She understood that many diseases were caused by dirty conditions, even though medical science had not yet discovered germs and bacteria. Florence insisted that hospital wards be cleaned regularly, that patients be washed and given clean clothes, and that proper toilets be installed. Every night, Florence made rounds through the hospital wards, carrying a lamp to check on patients in the darkness. Soldiers began calling her the lady with the lamp, because they could see her light moving through the wards as she visited each patient. This image became famous throughout England and made Florence a national hero. Florence also wrote letters to soldiers' families and helped wounded men write to their loved ones. She provided comfort and encouragement to soldiers who were far from home and suffering from terrible injuries. Many soldiers said that seeing Florence's lamp at night gave them hope and strength to keep fighting for their lives. The changes that Florence made at Scutari had dramatic results. When she arrived, 42 out of every 100 patients were dying. After her reforms were implemented, the death rate dropped to 2 out of every 100 patients. This incredible improvement proved that proper nursing care and hospital management could save thousands of lives. Florence kept detailed statistics about everything that happened in the hospital. She recorded how many patients arrived, what their injuries were, what treatments they received, and whether they lived or died. These records would later become crucial evidence for her efforts to reform healthcare throughout the British Empire, returning home as a national hero. When the Crimean War ended in 1856, Florence returned to England as the most famous woman in the country. Newspapers had published stories about her work, and the British public considered her a national hero. Songs were written about the lady with the lamp, and her picture appeared on souvenirs sold throughout England. Queen Victoria invited Florence to meet with her at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. The Queen wanted to thank Florence personally for her service to British soldiers and to hear her recommendations for improving military health care. This meeting gave Florence access to the highest levels of government and helped her promote her reform agenda. However, Florence was not interested in fame or celebrity. She was exhausted from her work in the Crimea and had become seriously ill with a fever that would affect her health for the rest of her life. More importantly, she was determined to use her popularity to bring about permanent changes in healthcare and nursing. Florence immediately began writing reports about what she had observed in the Crimea and what needed to be changed to prevent similar disasters in the future. She used her mathematical skills to create charts and graphs that clearly showed how poor sanitation and inadequate nursing care had caused unnecessary deaths. One of Florence's most important innovations was her use of what she called coxcomb diagrams to present statistical information. These circular charts showed the causes of death among British soldiers in a way that was easy to understand. The diagrams proved that disease caused by poor conditions killed far more soldiers than battle wounds. Florence's statistical evidence was so compelling that the government could not ignore it. In 1857, a royal commission was established to investigate the health of the army and recommend improvements. Florence provided much of the evidence that the commission used in its final report. The Royal Commission's report led to major reforms in military health care. New hospitals were built with proper ventilation and sanitation systems. Medical officers received better training. Standards were established for military nursing. These changes saved thousands of lives in future conflicts. Florence also worked to establish a training school for nurses. She believed that nursing should become a respected profession with proper education and standards. In 1860, she used money donated by grateful British citizens to establish the Nightingale Training School for Nurses at St. Thomas Hospital in London, revolutionizing healthcare and nursing. The Nightingale Training School became the model for nursing education around the world. Florence designed a curriculum that combined practical training with scientific knowledge. Student nurses learned anatomy, physiology, and chemistry, alongside hands-on patient care skills. They also studied hospital administration and statistics. Florence insisted that nursing students be women of good character, who were intelligent and dedicated to helping others. She wanted to change the public image of nursing from a job for poor, uneducated women to a noble profession for educated, respectable ladies. This transformation would make nursing more attractive to better candidates. The training program at the Nightingale School was rigorous and demanding. Students lived in a special residence where their behavior and character were carefully monitored. They attended lectures, studied textbooks, and spent long hours practicing their skills in hospital wards. Only the most dedicated students completed the full program. Graduates of the Nightingale School were called Nightingale nurses, and they were highly sought after by hospitals around the world. These well-trained nurses spread Florence's methods and principles wherever they went. They established new nursing schools and improved patient care in countless hospitals. Florence continued to work on healthcare reform for the rest of her life, even though her illness from the Crimea made her something of an invalid. She rarely left her home, but she maintained correspondence with government officials, medical professionals, and social reformers around the world. Florence became an expert on public health and hospital design. One of Florence's most important later projects was improving healthcare in British India. She studied statistics about disease and death rates in the Indian subcontinent and developed recommendations for better sanitation, nutrition, and medical care. Her work helped reduce death rates among British soldiers and civilians living in India. Florence also wrote several influential books about nursing and health care. Her most famous book, Notes on Nursing, became a standard textbook for nursing students. In this book, Florence explained her principles of patient care, hospital management, and the importance of cleanliness and fresh air in healing. Throughout her career, Florence emphasized the importance of using scientific methods and statistical evidence to improve healthcare. She believed that careful observation, accurate record keeping, and mathematical analysis were essential tools for understanding and solving medical problems. This approach helped establish the scientific foundation of modern medicine. The legacy of the lady with the lamp. Florence Nightingale lived to be 90 years old, dying in 1910. During her long life, she transformed healthcare and nursing from chaotic, dangerous practices into scientific, professional disciplines. Her work saved millions of lives and established principles that are still followed in hospitals today. Florence was the first woman elected as a Fellow of the Royal Statistical Society, recognizing her contributions to the use of statistics in healthcare and public policy. She was also awarded the Order of Merit by King Edward VII, becoming the first woman to receive this honor. These awards acknowledged her important contributions to British society and to humanity as a whole. The modern nursing profession exists because of Florence's vision and determination. She proved that nursing could be a noble, respected career that required intelligence, education, and scientific knowledge. Today's nurses receive the kind of professional training that Florence pioneered, and they follow many of the principles she established. Florence's emphasis on cleanliness, fresh air, and proper sanitation helped establish the scientific understanding of how diseases spread and how they can be prevented. Although she lived before the discovery of germs and bacteria, her practical methods were effective because they addressed the real causes of infection and illness. The image of Florence walking through dark hospital wards with her lamp became a symbol of compassion, dedication, and professional excellence in health care. Nurses today still take the Nightingale Pledge, promising to practice their profession with honor and dedication to patient welfare. This pledge connects modern nurses to Florence's legacy of service and caring. Florence's work also had important effects beyond health care. She demonstrated that women could be effective leaders and professionals when given the opportunity. Her success helped pave the way for other women to enter previously male-dominated fields and professions. Florence showed that intelligence and determination were more important than gender in achieving great things. The statistical methods that Florence developed for analyzing healthcare data became important tools in medical research and public health policy. Her innovative use of charts and graphs to present medical information helped establish the field of medical statistics. Modern epidemiologists and public health experts still use methods that Florence pioneered. Florence Nightingale's story shows us that one person's dedication and courage can change the world. She refused to accept the limitations that society placed on women of her time. Instead, she followed her calling to serve others and used her gifts to save lives and reduce suffering. Florence proved that the light of knowledge and compassion can illuminate even the darkest places and bring hope to those who need it most. Today, when we see skilled nurses providing excellent care in clean, modern hospitals, we should remember Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp. Her vision of professional nursing and scientific health care created the foundation for the medical miracles we often take for granted. Florence's legacy reminds us that caring for others is one of the noblest ways to spend our lives, and that dedication to serving humanity can make an extraordinary difference in the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the remarkable life of Florence Nightingale. Her story shows us that following our calling, even when others doubt us, can lead to achievements that benefit all humanity. If you enjoyed learning about Florence's inspiring life, please subscribe to our channel for more stories about extraordinary people who changed our world. Remember that you too have the power to make a difference by using your talents to help others and make the world a better place.